Good evening. You're listening to the Jon Gaunt podcast. Multiculturalism has failed. Do you agree with me or disagree with me? And why is parts or some parts of the Muslim community failing to integrate? Hard, serious questions which we're going to address in this program. Do you want to join in? Just put a comment at the bottom of the screen. So let's get started. I'm asking, is or has multiculturalism failed in the UK? And why is it that integration seems to remain such a challenge? Can we ever be fully integrated, particularly within parts of the Muslim community? I'm Jon Gaunt. It's one of the hardest, most controversial questions facing Great Britain today. I must just stress, this isn't about stirring up hatred. It's about facing uncomfortable truths that too many politicians and too much of the lamestream media, journalists and public figures are simply too scared to talk about and haven't talked about it enough for fear of being called racist. And then that's how we end up where we are today. Just look at what's happening around us. A Jewish man has been murdered in Manchester. Pro-Palestine marches continue to dominate the streets of our capital cities. There's all this row about the Union flag and the St. George's Cross and indeed the Palestinian flag. And I've got to say, some of this has descended into clear, open Jew hate, anti-Semitism. Jewish fans now banned from going to a football match, allegedly for their own safety. Although I'm a bit confused. I'm not sure if it's for their safety, i.e. the politicians were worried what the local Muslim community would do in Aston, or whether it's for the largely Pakistani Muslim community there and what the Israeli fans might do to them. Either way, it's a nonsense. The police should police. The government, let's face it, is terrified of causing offence. They've also almost now backed down on adopting a clear definition of Islamophobia. I don't think we need one, do you? And we certainly don't need a blasphemy law by the back door. And I've got suspicions the reason this game was banned, or the away fans are banned, as I said in my podcast over the weekend, was because the chief constable is so politically correct, more politically correct than thou. And I don't think that's the way to police our diverse communities. At the same time, of course, we're still waiting for the full public inquiries into the Muslim rape grooming gangs that destroyed so many young lives. Why are ministers and other public officials dragging their feet? And now we're hearing they want to put a copper and a social worker in charge of the inquiries. They're the very people, the victims, the survivors, the girls, they have ruined their lives. They're the type of people who turned a blind eye to this vicious abuse. And then we've got Sadiq Khan in London. He's saying, oh, there is no grooming gangs in London, which is clearly bullshit. And it looks like that story is now beginning to unravel. But let's face it, even our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, he didn't really want a public inquiry. And months later, we still haven't got one. So it makes you wonder, are we living parallel lives, as Robert Jenrick suggested a couple of weeks ago and got crucified for? Am I allowed to say that anymore? Let's be absolutely clear. The vast majority of British Muslims are law-abiding, decent citizens who contribute enormously to the country. Of course they do. But we cannot ignore the reality that decades after mass immigration began, parts of that community still appear isolated from mainstream British society in culture, in values, and dare I say it, in loyalty. Meanwhile, there's a load of flip-flop warriors arriving, who the majority of which happen to be Muslim as well. This is all a recipe for disaster. So why is this? Is it a failure of government policy? Is it self-segregation? Is it fear just of having honest conversations like this one? I thought long and hard. Let's see if this gets pulled. So how do we fix it before our social fabric tears even further apart? They're the questions I really want to get around to tonight. They're tough, they're controversial, but they're too important to ignore. So let's have the honest debate. Put your comments down underneath the screen in the comment box, and I'll come to you as soon as I can. Please keep it civil, though, right? This isn't an invitation to start throwing racism about. I want your reasons. Do you blame the politicians? Do you blame the local councils? Do you blame the ruling class? We need to bring Britain back together. I'm sure you agree with me. You might want to talk about individual elements of this, like the match at the Villa. Of course, that match should go on. I see the Muslim MP who stirred all this up, the independent MP, is basically claiming victory. And he said, oh, no, it was never about politics. It was only ever about safety. I smell BS. What do you think? So you might want to comment on it from that angle. You can come in any angle you want. And I'm sorry, I was going to do an extra show yesterday, but we had a family crisis. Somebody in the family very, very poorly. So everything came second. It was also Lisa's birthday weekend. So it kind of ruined that for her as well. So I feel quite sorry for her. So had a hell of a weekend, but I'm back now and I'm desperate to talk to you. If you want to talk, get your comments in the box. Let's put this in context, shall we? There's been a murder of a Jewish man in Manchester. 2 men died, as you know. What we know about that is that the Jewish community feel they're not safe on the streets. We've had another guy allegedly arrested for having the Star of David on a necklace round his neck. We've had the pro-Palestine marches. Is that freedom of expression? Is that what we should allow in our country? Or is it stirring up anti-Semitism? Where's the line? I think basically it's a bit of both, don't you? The Aston Villa game. Debate over the Israeli/Jewish fans being advised to stay away. Well, does that mean then that certain parts of Britain are not safe? Depends which interpretation you take. But if it was that the Israeli fans would get attacked, does that mean it's not safe to walk around Aston or Lascelles or that part of Birmingham? Because I thought a couple of weeks ago when we had the controversy with Robert Jenrick, the accusation was people aren't leading separate lives. Well, they clearly are, aren't they? And that's not good for society. So where do you stand on that? I think the Chief Constable's got a lot to answer for. And I was listening to Lisa Dandy, who works for Starmer. She's saying they want the game to go ahead. Well, you're the government, sort it. And now we're hearing they're going to do a U-turn on this whole Islamophobia definition. I'll tell you what, just scrap it. Chuck it in the bin. Why is it so politically sensitive? We don't need it. Just like we don't need the Quran protected more than any other religious book. We just don't need a blasphemy law just for one religion via the back door. 2-tier policing. Now, of course, when it comes to multiculturalism, by the way, I'll tell you where I stand. I think it's failed. Not quite sure why. Maybe you're going to tell me. But there's two kind of main narratives. The success story narrative is that diversity is our strength and it's enriched the UK. It's produced global cities and fostered tolerance. I personally would say it's produced global third world cities. Go to parts of Birmingham, parts of London, parts of Manchester. They're shitholes. Let's be honest. There's the failure of narrative as well, which is that basically multiculturalism has led to segregation, parallel societies, rising extremism, and tensions now show that multiculturalism is not delivering integration. Jenrick said we're living parallel lives. Do you agree with him? So I want to talk about that as well. Let's talk about the Muslim community in particular. And I'm talking in a generality here. It seems to me that most other ethnic groups have, by and large, integrated. Look at the Jewish community. Look at the Hindu community today with Diwali. Nobody minds their kids learning about Diwali at school, do they? And if they do, they're an idiot. They've integrated. I would say to a large extent the Afro-Caribbeans, certainly the people who came from the West Indies, have integrated. After terrible racism directed to them when they first came, they now make a massively valuable contribution to our society. And look, there isn't that kind of racism that there used to be, for example, on the football terraces. I saw a statistic today. Most football players in the Premier League and in the Championship are of or from an ethnic background. Doesn't bother me either way. I think it's brilliant. What has caused this, though? Why is the Muslim community so different? And I'm not saying all of them, because clearly they're not. There's some very, very successful Muslims in this country who are fully integrated and made a real success of their lives. But it's the Muslim community. Is it because they live, the second lot of Muslims who came, that they live in squalor because we don't want them living next to us if we're white? I'm just being honest with you. So is it this kind of socio-economic marginalisation and discrimination? Is it something to do with the religion? The actual religion itself? Is it to do with the extremists, the Islamists, who would come in there and exploit social deprivation and indeed division? Is it the government who have failed? He says, you know, on housing, education, or that stupid Prevent organisation. So like I say, this isn't anti-Muslim what I'm talking about. Most of them are peaceful, law-abiding citizens, but a minority, and it's a significant minority, and their actions result in outsized social consequences. Of course, the grooming gangs. Nobody thinks that every Muslim lad or old man is a pervert. And we all know that most paedophiles are white, unless you look at it per capita, obviously, because we're a largely white community. And most paedophilia happens in the family. We all know that. But the grooming gangs, why were our political leaders and the bosses of things like the police, the social services, education, too scared to confront it? Scared of being called racist. These people who talk about cultural identity, talk about inclusion, talk about being kind, they weren't that kind, were they, to these girls who were being attacked? And even now, why is it taking so long to get this inquiry off the ground? We want justice for the victims. We're not really interested in the perpetrator's background, but if they are largely of Pakistani Muslim background, there is no reason why we shouldn't be told that, like some of the sexual assaults and rapes that are happening by the flip-flop people who have just arrived in our country. We need to know. That doesn't mean we think all of them are like that. Treat the actual problem. Don't make everybody else a far-right thug. And then there's double standards, because it seems to me that the Jewish community have been left totally unprotected, whilst the political leaders are very keen on talking about Islamophobia. The recent killing of the Jewish guys in Manchester is a prime example. Starmer made a statement about it, but he had to also talk about an attack on a mosque where nobody got hurt. I still think it's wrong. No one should be doing that. But it's kind of, where are you? What are you up to? And how they used to always talk about hate crime. And it was always about Islamophobia, not about Jew hate or anti-Semite attacks. Was it? And is it acceptable in Britain in the 21st century to say Jews can't go to a football game? Answer, no, it's not. What message does this send when anti-Semitic incidents surge, but the police appear passive? That politically correct, woke idiot in the West Midlands, what was he trying to achieve? And like I say, no one's answered this question. I keep coming back to it. Do they want the game, the away fans not to come because they're scared the local community are going to attack them, i.e. we can't trust the local, largely Muslim population? Or is it they're scared that the Israelis are going to attack them? And then with the Liberals this weekend, read all this nonsense about, this about Amsterdam, that about Amsterdam. Well, Millwall would never play again. And then, of course, there's been a game cancelled between the rivals, one of these teams, and the rival team in Israel. And they're now using that as evidence that that's what they would do if they came to Handsworth. Has everyone forgotten Hazel and what happened there? Admittedly started by the ridiculous action of the football authorities. But this idea that you're going to punish them for it, and I've heard people say, well, British clubs were banned for years in Europe. That doesn't justify anything. This is all about impressing upon people a certain community's superiority. And that would be wrong if it was a white community, a Christian community, a non-religious community, a Jewish community. So it's just as wrong when certain community leaders in the Muslim population do it. Am I right or am I wrong? Let's have your opinion. Let's get debating this. This is difficult. This isn't an easy one. And as I say, this isn't an open invitation to start bashing Muslims. I want to know how we move this forward. What's your message to Keir Starmer? What's your message to the police and the local council? And particularly if you live in Birmingham. This can't continue. Let me tell you, if this does continue, there will be, a form of civil war on the streets of Britain. It's madness. Look, why can't we live together? Before 9/11, I never even thought about Muslims. Go for a curry. I mean, I knew they were Muslim, but it didn't really infiltrate me. And I don't want it to now. I don't care what your religion is. I don't believe in religion. I think I've got the majority view. How the hell do we move this on? Because I believe our politicians have put us in a position where we're divided, and they always do that so that they can rule. Why hasn't Starmer put his foot down and said, that match is going ahead? You don't agree with me, Chief Constable, we're going to sack you. Simple. Simple. Let's get on with it. Are you with me or against me? Please let me know. Thank you for everyone who's pressing the like button. That's brilliant. And if you really enjoy what I'm doing, please feel free to donate by clicking the $sign and chucking a few quid into the hat, because don't forget, these are independently financed. Or alternatively, go to www.buymeacoffee.com. As I say, apologies. I really wanted to do a show yesterday, but it just wasn't possible. I don't want to go into any further detail than that. Medical crisis, shall we could say, but things are getting better now. Right, let's move on. Labour are traitors, says Roseth 22. Can you expand on that a bit? I mean, I might agree with you, but expand on it. Steve on YouTube says, evening, John. Labour won't do anything because they rely on the Muslim vote in cities like Bradford, Birmingham, etc. Well, yeah, but they can't necessarily rely on it now, can they? Because we've now got independent Muslim MP standing and getting elected or getting very close to being elected. The bloke in Birmingham who has stirred this pot and is now threatening to sue everybody He's a prime example. He's MP for Gaza. In Coventry, we've got Zara Sultana, who used to be in the Labour Party. She's now left. She's now with Jeremy Corbyn, but she's going down the same level. She's the MP for Gaza. Have we now got those conflicts on the streets of our country when they shouldn't even be here? That, those arguments are arguments for Israel and Palestine. And forgive me, but there was a ceasefire. But Hamas, I spoke to somebody this morning and he said, it's not right what the Israelis are doing. I said, what do you mean? I said, they haven't given back the hostages. Give back the hostages like they promised and the bodies. There'll be nothing happening. There'll be no bombing. People just hate Israel, don't they? Well, hate Jewish people. That's the only conclusion you can come to. The same with this football game. I'm not saying they're not violent. They obviously are. But so are Millwall. All you do is you meet them at the station, you escort them into the ground, you keep them in the ground until after the game's gone and all the locals have disappeared, then you escort them back to the train or the coaches. Happens every weekend. And this politically correct chief constable says, I don't think we can cope with that. How many are going to come on a Tuesday for a midweek match from Israel? 1,000? 2,000? How many does he cope with when Birmingham and the Villa are playing, let alone Walsall? It's just ludicrous, isn't it? Doesn't add up. And it's come back to bite him. And also, I think what's probably surprised him is that Starmer is not on his side on this one. Give Starmer his due. He's created the atmosphere where this nonsense can go on. But why aren't we getting more of the Muslim community to integrate? Or maybe I'm being wrong. I like your views. People will always gravitate towards their nationality or religion. It's no different, this is Jackie Ward on Facebook, to the English that moved to Spain. They all stick together. Yeah, New York's the same with the Italians and the Jewish quarters. I agree, and the Irish. Multicultural communities don't really work. We can all get on, but integration rarely happens in general. I think that's probably a good point. Didn't Adrian Chiles do a documentary about Big Ron? Do you remember when Big Ron got into trouble, Ron Atkinson? I think he did a documentary with him. And then Adrian Chiles also did one about himself, basically saying, well, how many Asian people do I know? I know some at work, but do I go into their homes? Do we mix in that way? See, and I think that's a question. And is integration vital? I think what's vital is surely everybody getting on and all being united under the flag and not being prejudiced against if you happen to have black or brown skin, or you're a Jamaican originally, or a Pakistani. But what it can't mean is that you can come here and do things that are culturally, criminally, and socially unacceptable to the majority of the population. And I think the Uber liberals have allowed that to happen. Maybe I'm wrong. By the way, if you want to restream this, please do. Anything to get more people watching and listening. Let's go to Denise Deacon, Facebook. She says, Islam considers others who aren't Muslim to be inferior. I think a lot of religions fundamentally think that as well, to be fair, Denise. That's why they don't want to integrate with us. Islam is the worst thing that can happen to a country. Ask yourself, would you want your wife, daughters, or granddaughters to live in an Islamic country? If it was in Dubai and they were earning all that money, I don't think I'd have a problem. But I'm just being honest with you. If the answer is no, then make sure this country doesn't become one of them as well. Personally, I'm scared of my grandchildren growing up in this ever-growing Islamic country. Thank you, Denise, for that. Is it increasingly Islamic? That's obviously sometimes what the accusation that is thrown at Starmer. But that's because Starmer hasn't grasped this. No politician has grasped it. We do have two-tier justice, and that's got to stop, hasn't it? Two-tier policing as well. It's obviously got to stop. That builds resentments on all sides. Sharon Vance has just said ridiculous. Thank you, Sharon, on Facebook, but could you give us more than one word? Because I don't know what you're saying is ridiculous. understand how debate works. Or Robin Jacob, Islam is not one thing. It's many different things depending on the country it's developed in. Oh, this is interesting. He's on Facebook. He says, I've lived in Islamic countries and the cultural background are different. We need to vet very carefully those coming to this country. I think you're right, Robin, on every level there. I mean, I come from Coventry, and I remember in the 60s when a lot of the Pakistani doctors came to Coventry. They all now live in the poshest areas of Coventry. They came, they worked their socks off, they were brilliant. But then there's been another wave, hasn't there? Or 2 or 3 waves of people coming in. Are they the same kind of Muslims? I don't know. They're not as highly skilled as those doctors. The majority of them. I don't know. I can't get my head around it. The UK will never, ever recover from this mass invasion, says Stuart Lowe. I think you're right. Simply, Stuart, there's been too many too quickly, especially with the Boris wave. And especially when Tony Blair let all the Polish plumbers in, who actually most of them worked their balls off. But let them in. It was too many. The pace of change was too quick. And you see this happening in communities now with the migrant hotels, or indeed with the houses of multiple occupation. They don't consult the local community. So no wonder the local community get angry about it and want to protest about it. It's not been handled well at all, has it? Any of this. Any of it. And that leaves gaps for extremists on all sides to come in and stir it up. But we've got a major problem when people think it's okay to march through the streets of London with banners and flags of Hamas. Haven't we? Clearly we have. Let's have your opinion. Don't forget, I do need your donations to keep these podcasts going. Just go to www.buymeacoffee.com/Jon Gaunt. I'm trying to get to all your comments as we move on. Or alternatively, press that $ and send me a few quid. Mick Smith on YouTube says, evening, John. Evening, Mick. Nigel Gordon says, it's not safe anywhere in England's cities. No police on the streets anymore. It's got to be a deterrent. Only time I see a copper is in the local sandwich shop or the supermarket getting lunch. I think one of the major problems about British policing is when they close the canteens, my friend. Remember when my dad was a copper, they had a canteen. And they had the police boxes where they could go and have a coffee, a brew when they're on the beat. Now you see them in Tesco's, don't you? You're right. And you see them in petrol stations. I don't think that's good. I also think it was better when coppers lived in the community. Although, I must stress, when we were kids and we lived in a police house, we had no money. They weren't paid properly. They didn't get paid properly, I think, until Mrs. Thatcher got into power. But I wouldn't necessarily blame the rank and file. It's the Rainbow Warrior Shoelace Brigade, isn't it? Huh? Hugger Hoodie, David Cameron's mob. Although, thinking about David Cameron, he said something about integration. He felt that there wasn't enough integration. Here's a controversial point. Do you want to integrate? No matter what religion you are now or where you come from, do you really want to integrate? I was thinking about this the other night. I went out with my mates and then came home. I didn't have a very good night. It was a bit of a quiet one, you know what I mean? Friday. I think I was expecting too much. And I thought, well, I don't think I'm integrated. I mean, my daughter is in a mixed relationship, but in general terms, I don't think I do. All my mates are white. Is that just by nature? I don't know. I'm not going to beat myself up about it. Where should we go next? Craig Urquhart. It'll be interesting if there is the same concern when young boys of Burn, who have their own hooligan factions, as a lot of terms, have PS swish. Is this meant to be in English, Craig? Am I missing something? It would be interesting if there is the same concern when the young boys of Burn, who have their own hooligan factions, talking about another football club, as a lot of teams have, who are going to play Villa at the end of November. Yeah, okay, a very long, convoluted way of saying it, but I understand what you mean. It's the same. The better example is the one I used on Twitter today. What if the Villa got drawn against Galatasaray, the Turkish side, majority of which will be Muslim? And I know Turkey is much more liberal when it comes to religion, but would there be objections then? And also, Galatasaray fans, welcome to hell. They aren't necessarily the nicest or the most polite of football supporters, are they? This was all politically motivated, in my opinion, and we can't have ghettos. And if we're part of the reason those things have developed, or politicians because we haven't given enough support, let's address that as well. But just opening another youth club and giving them another pool table won't do it, will it? I haven't got a problem with any other ethnic minorities who come and live peacefully here, says Denise. I have 6 grandchildren, 4 of them are mixed race. It's got nothing to do with race. It's about religion and culture. Denise, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Denise, because you're right. You're right. The Hindu population celebrating Diwali, the Sikhs. I mean, I know this very well because Coventry's full of Sikhs, and so is Leamington Spa, where I lived for a long time. They seem more integrated. They still kept their customs, their culture, their language, all the rest of it. But are they more integrated? So is this a particular problem of the Muslim community? Is it a particular problem because of the terrorist outrages we had, starting with 9/11? But there wasn't loads of attacks on Muslims after that, was there? I think we've been fairly tolerant, the settled community. I don't know. This is why I wanted to talk about it. PJ Pudge O'Sullivan says Millwall aren't that bad. You're a Millwall fan then, are you? I know Millwall get bad press, but they bring a lot of it on anyway. But I wouldn't ban them. As an observation, it appears that Islam does not have a structure like Christianity, and it depends what tribe you're from and how you interpret Islam, including Wahhabism. You're right, Mick. Of course you are. And also, it's not like somebody described to me like the Church of England. You got the Archbishop. Oh, got to be careful with this stuff. The Archbishop of Canterbury, who's just left now. We've got a woman, haven't we? And there's a structure through the churches and the parishes and the dioceses. Same with the Catholic religion, but not necessarily with the Muslim religion, as I understand it. So, yeah, I think that's probably a point, maybe harder to control. I don't know. Pam Millett, someone has suggested that the government, e.g. Starmer, wants us to stand up and riot and create a civil war against the influx of Islamic Muslims. So Starmer can bring in martial law, ban all future elections, and Labour stays in number 10 forever. I don't think so, Pam, but I tell you what, I should think he wants to get out of number 10. He's just useless. He must know he's useless. And also, he must be concerned about this trial coming up with the Ukrainian blokes as well, because that's been put back now, I understand, till after Christmas. But that's a weird story, isn't it? Robin Jacob says, I've been through 2 revolutions and 3 coups. The GB is getting close to civil war. Well, it feels like that. I just hope it's not the case, Robin. I just hope it's not the case. We've got a massive recession coming. Oh, have you seen that as well today? Rachel Thieves is now blaming Brexit and Nigel Farage for the fact that the cost of living is through the roof. Now, you could be against Brexit, but to put all the blame on Brexit, was it 9-10 years on? It's a bit of a stretch, isn't it? It's a bit of a stretch. And have you noticed they're not putting Starmer up much at the moment? What's all that about? Probably because there was a survey today who said that most people think he's a robot. Not a very good robot or that either. Anyway, let's move on. Let's take some more. Mick Frinton C. As the Jewish comedian Jackie Mason said, you see 4 Jews walking towards you, you're not going to get mugged. You don't hear about Jews, Hindus, Sikhs causing trouble. The best immigrants you can have. Well, there have been terrorism. There was a guy at the Jaguar in Coventry who was a Sikh terrorist. I remember that story. And there can be dreadful fights in all ethnic communities and indeed in the white or the black community who've lived here for years and years. So, but I take your point in general. That's really what I was asking. Am I wrong? Am I a racist or an Islamophobe to say it seems to me that it's the Muslims who haven't integrated as much. Maybe I've got that wrong. 7 have been sent back to France today. 1,000 came in, says Pam Millett. I know. It's a joke. They had videos over the weekend, Pam, saying, look how well we're doing. It's just a farce. 2 thumbs up from Stuart Lowe. Thank you, Stuart. What if they just cancelled the game, says Den Spinks. Do you know what? If they cancelled the game, I'd go mental. I think I'd be more annoyed if they did that. You cannot bow to this kind of religious sectarian style of politics. You can't. And likewise, I don't want it moved to Manchester. Somebody says, what if they did it at Wembley or Manchester? No. If our second city and the chief constable of that city, who, by the way, should resign, if he can't cope with an influx of, say, 1,000, even, okay, we're going mad, 5,000 fans, right? There won't be that many on a midweek match. But if there were, why can't he cope with that? Doesn't he have to cope with that when the pro-Palestine mob march through Birmingham? Doesn't he have to cope with that with the Villa at home and Birmingham City on the same day? Yes. Does he have another problem? Because obviously Birmingham, centre of the Midlands, Coventry might be playing at home, Wolverhampton might be playing at home. It's just nonsense. Your job is to police. Take off your fancy little headscarf that you put on when you talk to the communities, when you're asking for permission to police them. I know it was another WM cop, wasn't it, who basically didn't intervene in the riots. They said, oh, the local community can deal with it. He wouldn't have said that to the white community, would he? Stephen and Sharon, the Hamas is a flag, and it's the same as the swastika. Well, I'm not going to argue with you on that, then. You asked if we really want to integrate. I have a variety of colleagues at work, says Jackie Ward on Facebook, from different religions and countries. Some are very nice people that I can call friends, but I don't want to integrate with them outside of work. I don't do religion, for starters, and it leads to some interesting debates at work. Consequently, this is a really honest comment. I have no desire to live in a mixed ethnic community. Some people, if you said that on Radio 5, you'd be condemned. You'd never get on again. But I think you're just being honest, Jackie. I don't necessarily agree with you, but I think you're being honest. Thank you for it. Den Spink says, I agree, John. What bit do you agree with? But thank you very much indeed. It must have been something I just said. Right, a bit disappointed. I thought we'd get a few more comments than we've got, because I think this might be a slow burner. The Chief Constable one over the weekend, that was a slow burner. Suddenly loads of people began to download it. Sometimes maybe you just need a bit of time to think about the subject. I'm going to have to stop now because I've got a really sore throat. I just hope I haven't got a cold coming on. I'll be back tomorrow at 6:30. Hope you can join me then. Don't forget, the biggest thing you can do to help me promote these podcasts, broadcasts, whatever you want to call them, is by pressing the like button, but also going to YouTube to the Jon Gaunt TV page and subscribing. Doesn't cost anything. It's completely free. But if you do that, it means you're on the list. Every time I go live, you'll get told about it and you'll be able to get involved. If you want to donate and help me keep these going, or we haven't had any tonight, so if you want to donate, please press that little $sign and donate whatever you can afford. Keep independent broadcasting alive. And likewise, if you wish to do it on my coffee thing, you can. It's www.buymeacoffee.com/Jon Gaunt. I got to say, it's Tuesday or Wednesday is the cutoff day for that. And I won't even be, the amount of money I've taken on that this week, I won't be able to afford even a skinny latte if I wanted one, because there ain't been much money donated on Buy Me a Coffee. But if you can help me out, please do so. I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, Jackie Ward, I can go now because she sent me the 3 hearts. Josie Brooks says, bye, John. Hi, Josie, and bye to you as well. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for a good show. Enjoyed it. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm off to watch EastEnders. I'll be back at 6:30. Until then, if you've got kids, give them a kiss, give them a hug. Hey, don't forget to tell them you love them. See ya.